All right, so here's how you actually make this chart. So the first thing you need to decide is whether or not you are going to have the chart sit across the whole page, or if you want to use partitioning on the page so that you can have additional observations on the right-hand side as an example. So let's assume that in our case, we do want to have partitioning. And so that's the first thing that we would do, is to actually figure out how much space we're going to dedicate to the chart on the left-hand side, and then the observations or the takeaways on the right-hand side. So to do that, we're going to go into shapes and we're going to draw a line where we think works best for what we're trying to accomplish. Let's say that it sits somewhere there. And so that's then tells us how much space we're going to have for the chart, and then how much space we're going to have for the takeaways. What is good to do with this line is to format it as well. So normally you want to give it some sort of neutral color. So maybe we'll make it gray. And we also want to make it not as thick, just so that it doesn't catch the eye quite as much. And so this sort of makes it look a little bit better. The other thing we might want to add here is just a small circle like this, and then put a bit of an arrow inside of the circle like this. This is just to visually indicate that you sort of read the page from left to right. And so you look at the chart first, and then second you look at the observations to help you make more sense of the chart. One other useful thing we can do here is to format the bubble as well. So maybe remove the outline and then change the fill to be dark blue in line with our color scheme. That makes it look much better and much more professional. The next thing we might want to do here is that I think the box for the title is a bit too big and also a bit too narrow. So we might want to format that as well. So first thing we can do here is just expand the width just so that we can have more text in there. But then secondly, compress the height so that it doesn't take up quite as much real estate. We also notice that it is using quite a heavy font here. So let's maybe make it smaller, 24, 28, something like that. And then make it bold, and then also format the shape. So you'll notice that the text at the moment has got a little bit of padding. So we want to remove that because it doesn't really help us. So we go into these menus here and then reduce how much padding exists all around our text here, like that. All right, so I think now we're ready to draw our chart. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to use ThinkCell for this. So if we go into the Insert tab, if you have ThinkCell installed, you'll have a menu like this that would have the Excel diagram in it. So you click on that, and then you need to select a bar chart from across all the different types of charts that you can draw. And you can notice that you can sort of choose orientation of your bar chart as well. So we want to pick the one that is pointing up so that we have a regular horizontal bar chart as a result. So once we select that, we can then decide where we want to put it on the slide. So it's good to align it to the left-hand side and then click once, and that's going to produce a dummy version of the chart and open up a window like this. So the way ThinkCell works is that it has an Excel worksheet built into PowerPoint, and so you can edit the numbers for your chart, and then ThinkCell is automatically going to configure the visual to correspond to whatever table or whatever information you put into the Excel sheet. So in our case, we just want to have a simple revenue chart. So we're going to have to get rid of the additional information that we're not going to need. So the row of numbers we're going to use is all going to have to do with revenue. So we might as well just call it revenue. Then we can see that the period is starting at 2023 by default. We want to change that to 2019. Then we can see that the following years are a formula off of the preceding year, and so that takes us to 2021, and we want to extend that to 2023 like this, and then we want to insert the numbers that we want to use. So let's say these numbers look like this, and then that's it really. So we put in all the numbers, and then we close the Excel tab, and we can see that ThinkCell has produced a chart to match the information that we've inserted. What we notice is that there is now a name for our variable on the left-hand side, which we don't need. So let's delete that. And then we can also see that the chart is not placed correctly. So it's not taking up all of the space that we dedicated to it. So we can just go here and then expand how wide it goes like this. And then we can also move it down a little bit just so that it sort of corresponds with where our line dividing the slide is located. The next thing we want to do is we want to change the color to correspond to the color that we want and in line with our color scheme for presentation. So let's say we're going to use this dark navy color for this chart. And there we go. So we have the chart. The next thing we want to do to complete the slide is that we want to insert a bit of text. So firstly, we'll want to add a description of the chart. So in our case, we'll call it revenue evolution of division A, comma, and then we also want to insert units. This is very important because otherwise readers are not going to know what the numbers actually represent. So in our case, it's millions of dollars. And then we probably also want to bold the title as opposed to the units of measure, just so that we can create some information hierarchy for the reader of the chart as well. Now we can see that there's again some padding around the text, which we don't need because it sort of makes it hard to line everything up. So we go into format shape and then we'll remove the padding like we did previously for the title. So we set everything to 0 and that makes it closer to what we need. So now we can align it more properly like this. So maybe actually put the title of the chart up here. Then the next thing we typically do is we copy that text box because then it preserves all the formatting that we just did. And we put it on the right hand side and we turn it into a title for that part of the chart and we call it observations. There we go. Now the reader or the audience is going to know what the difference is between the left hand side and the right hand side. We can then copy that same text box and move it down and that becomes the actual text for our observations. We want to unbold it again to create some visual hierarchy, and then we probably want to use a smaller font there. So instead of 18, maybe we set it to 14. And so this is where our observations are going to go. So I'm just going to insert TBC placeholder text. We can see that spacing across the different paragraphs is pretty tight. So we want to increase that to make it more readable. So we go into paragraph and then we add spacing like this, and that typically does the trick. So now when we populate the text, you'll see that paragraphs are going to be offset from each other nicely with a bit of space in between them. And then finally, how you do it is you've now got the chart, you've forced yourself to sit down and write your observations, and then that makes you ready to then maybe write some sort of key takeaway where it says that the title should go. So in our case, we can say something to the effect of Division A has been able to recover its revenue from the low of 2021 to around 100 million in 2023. Let's say that's the main takeaway that we want the reader to know. If you need to add sources, you can also do that now. So this is generally a good idea because then your reader is going to know where the information came from, but also you're going to know because you're going to forget where you took that information 3 months from now. And so it's good to record that source for everyone's benefit. We're going to expand the text box like this and then just type in the source. Let's say it was taken from the annual reports for 2021 through to 2023. We might want to make this text even smaller, so let's call it 12, and then maybe make it gray just so that it doesn't jump out quite as much and people can see that it's secondary information compared to everything else on the page. And then lastly, if we want to use white space above the chart, we can now do so. So let's say we decided to use this function, which is adding a difference between two different rows. So we can click on that and we can see that it's placed it where it thinks we want to place it, which is not correct. And so we need to go in and change these anchor points to tell ThinkCell which two columns, which two bars are of interest for us. And so in our case, it's going to be 2021 compared to 2023. So it draws the change automatically. So there you go. So now we have that chart and it's ready to go. And if we want to use further elements on this chart, like for example, we want to add subdivisions inside of the bar charts, we can also do that. So what we need to do is double click or click on this little icon in the corner, which is going to open the Excel worksheet again. And so instead of where it says total revenue, maybe now I want to split it into, maybe we'll say market A and market B. And so what I like to do sometimes is just keep the totals, but turn it into a formula where the total number is going to subtract the value from market B, for example, and that's going to become the value of market A. So let's say in our case it was only 2 markets. So that way you can be sure that the total is still going to add up and you're not going to make a mistake by typing in information incorrectly in terms of market A and market B. So now we're going to place some values and then ThinkCell is going to automatically calculate the changes. So we can see now that we've got 2 different colors on the chart. So what can be a good idea now is to double click inside of ThinkCell and then select this item, which is adding a legend. And so that's how you add a legend. Then we want to move it to somewhere around here, and then maybe make it smaller font as well, just so that people, again, it creates a bit of visual hierarchy. What it also lets us do is click on each of the categories and select a different color. So normally we want to put the darker color at the bottom and then pick a lighter color for information sitting above that, because it just usually looks much better that way. So here you go. That's how you insert segmentation into the chart, and that's how you also create a legend so people can understand what the different colors in the chart correspond to. And that's how you make the chart.